My mum was a single parent, and as such, she worked almost constantly and was nearly always tired, and so she was not the most present parent. But despite being only 2 years older than my sister, I was headstrong and insisted on acting as the man in the family, putting on a tough face and powering through things, like comforting my sister when she had a nightmare so we didn't wake my mum. This all happened while we were on a shopping trip. I'd say this was about 7, making my sister Elise about 5. She was a talkative child, always required someone's attention, and yet neither my mum or I noticed that she had disappeared until we reached the checkout. Thinking that she had simply gotten distracted and wandered off, my mum wasn't too concerned, and I volunteered to go and get her. I walked past the aisles, peeking my head down each to try and spot her dark, curly hair and a pink jumper when I heard a muffled crying and a woman trying to shush someone. Rounding the corner to investigate, I saw something chilling. A woman crouched down, desperately trying to quieten my younger sister with her hands vice-like on her wrist. Seeing me, the woman put a smile on and tried to shoo me away. She said, "Don't worry, she just had a little fall." I vividly remember little 7-year-old me straighten up, puffing my chest to look as tough as possible, with a glare that I spat out, "That's my sister." Her smile dropped and she let go of Alice, and I grabbed her and ran back to the front where Mum was waiting outside. She didn't seem too concerned about the lady. She was probably exhausted, to be honest, despite the nail marks on my sister's arm, and we just went home that day. I'm 21 now, but I still think about that day sometimes, and it always gives me a sick feeling in my stomach. So I live by a freeway overpass. I can cross it and go to stores, and it's about 10 or 11:30 p.m. at night and foggy, and I wanted to grab some food. I decided to go somewhere where I needed to cross the overpass or walk almost a mile extra to get around. At the end of the overpass, too, is my city's largest cemetery. So I'm walking and I get to the halfway point of the bridge and I see a male form in all black with a black hood on. It looks like the person was wearing a hoodie or something, and I just had this oh shit feeling about this, but continued walking anyway. Out of nowhere, though, I see this thing hop over the overpass. I screamed, but hacked up phlegm instead, and my asshole puckered, and I seriously started to cry and ran to the spot. If this thing jumped, it would have hit the grass median that divided the freeway. But when I got there, I saw nothing. Nothing at all. I stood there and looked and ran across the overpass and saw nothing on the other side, too. No thud, no honking, no screeching of tires. I stood there sweating in 36-degree weather in a panic. And once I convinced myself that I had just hallucinated, I continued walking. I get my food and I head back, and I get to the end of the overpass to walk back and got hit with just complete dread. It was out of nowhere, and I'm trying to remain calm and listen to my footsteps on the pavement. And then I heard it. Shuffling of another person's feet. I swing around and see nothing. I was the only person on the overpass. I continue walking and can hear footsteps on the wet pavement. I would stop and I would hear additional footsteps too. Well, that's it. I decided to walk in a jogging pace at this point. I'm a good 250 feet from home and I'm moving, and I hear the footsteps behind me again. Honestly, I'm about to lose it, and I'm at the edge of the overpass before it hits my street. There's a large puddle at the corner and I still can't see anything, but I can hear it all. I stomp into the puddle and run across the street, and then I heard a splash in the puddle and footsteps too. At this point, I'm near my house and I'm still turning around and constantly seeing nothing. I cross the road and still hear mine and another person's footsteps. I hit my driveway and yell, "You're not welcome here," and immediately the footsteps stopped. worst part about all of this was me fumbling for my keys with my hands frozen and trying to unlock my door, thinking that I was about to get murdered or something. I have no clue what the fuck I encountered that night, but man, it was creepy. This happened a little over 10 years ago when I was living on some off-campus apartment at the Art Institute. Good prices, but caveat being that one person in the apartment had to be enrolled at the school. My girlfriend at the time, Emily, lived in the same apartment complex too. And there were a lot of parties there with everyone being students, and with it being off-campus, things had a tendency to get a little out of hand. It was still pretentious, but pretty wild activities from time to time, if you catch my drift. I just so happened to be over her place for a few hours, which was probably about 20 seconds walking distance of my apartment. I knew that my roommate and my friend Brandon were hanging out at my place while I was over at Emily's, and I was about half awake, about to drift off to sleep in her room, when I hear a pounding at her door. I assumed it was Brandon just trying to mess with me, likely because he was bored and no parties were happening that night. Well, I meandered to the door in my boxes with 100% certainty that it was him. It was about probably midnight or so, I'd say. But for some reason, before I touched the handle, I paused for no reason. It just had a weird feeling. I peeked through the peephole, and in the yellow light, I see this man boy with a buzzed head and a stained white t-shirt. So I do what I normally do and just stand there in silence until he leaves, right? I didn't realize, though, that the door was unlocked, and I start to hear the guy turn the knob to open the fucking door, and as it cracks open slowly, I pull it open full force. As directly as I could manage, I was like, "What do you need?" And he just kind of stands there moving back and forth and mumbles, "Oh, and is so-and-so home?" Channeling some other identity, I just kind of straighten my back and, in a deepish voice, think of someone telling a demon that they aren't welcome in their home. I go, "You've got the wrong place, buddy." You always know shit's about to go down when buddy gets thrown out there, right? Well, he drops the act and his face totally changes to a grim-looking meth face. And he starts smiling and is like, "Oh yeah, you sure?" At that point, I just go, "Yep, get the fuck out of here," and slam the door and lock it. I called my friend Brandon. He's a very big guy, and he starts hauling ass out of my apartment and running around the complex trying to find the guy, which turned out to be two dudes. One must have been hiding during the exchange. They scrambled and either hid or just hightailed it out of me, but I still wonder sometimes what would have happened had I just rolled over in bed that night and didn't answer the door. Yesterday I took my dog to the park, as I normally do. It was a cold but sunny day, so when I got there, about half the parking lot was full. However, everyone seemed to be leaving, and as we were walking toward the wooded part of the park, I noticed a guy dressed in all black with big sunglasses and a huge handkerchief covering his face. It kinda gave me the creeps, but I just ignored it. When we were halfway through the park, I heard a man yelling and I couldn't see anyone. But my dog was standing very alert and growling, and I turned around and the man that I saw earlier was standing right behind me. He says, "You stupid fucking bitch." And I say, "Excuse me?" And he says, "Move your fucking car." And I say, "Mine?" And he says, "Yes, you stupid fucking bitch, move your fucking car." And I'm like, "Well, is there something wrong with it?" And then he says, "You've parked way too close to me and there's an empty fucking parking lot right next to it." At this point, I'm just totally confused and, to be quite frank, a little scared. I told him that it wasn't empty when I got there, but I was still happy to move it because I didn't want to piss him off any more than he already was. He followed me and walked behind me muttering cuss words and insults. And then he said, "You're so lucky I found you. I have a crowbar in my car and I was going to smash your windows and slash your tyres. And then I was going to find you and smash your fucking head in, but I'm having a good day today. I'm in a really good mood. It's just stupid bitches like you that ruin things. I had my mace in my hand at this point and my knife in the other, and we kept walking towards the parking lot, but he just kept getting angrier. And at one point he screamed, "Aren't you going to apologise?" I told him that I was sorry and that I hoped that he has a better day, and he said, "Better day? I'm having a great day. You're alive, aren't you?" Well, I started to walk faster at that, and so did he. I made a full sprint to my car, and the guy just stopped and watched me, laughing. He started throwing sticks and rocks at my car too, while laughing as I was driving off. Obviously, I filed a police report, but I don't know if he was just trying to scare me or what, but I sure hope that he doesn't actually hurt someone in the future, because, man, what a psycho. This was back in 2009, and I was 15 and started my freshman year in high school. The first 2 months were great. I was meeting new people, catching up with friends from middle school, and just settling in. One day, though, I was drawing a picture on my binder and having fun, and a girl in my math class appeared in front of my desk. She seemed interested in my artwork and introduced herself. Pam was abnormally short for her age and had greasy curly hair, a face and chest covered in acne, orange teeth, and a strange gaze. She wasn't looking at me or around me. She was kind of looking through me. I ignored the uneasy feeling from her gaze and thought that it was just me being anxious about meeting someone new. I was quiet and insecure back then. I usually hung out with nerds and geeks, so I would feel more social and accepted. I introduced myself to her and asked her if she liked art. She said, "I love art, and I draw too." She said this while maintaining her intrusive eye contact, mind you. I said, "Oh, that's cool. Maybe you could show me your art sometime." She kept her eye contact steady, like she was waiting for me to say more, and I just kind of awkwardly looked back down at my binder and just kept drawing. She seemed to get the point, though, and walked away. Pam came back about 10 minutes later with a specific piece of art and put it on top of my binder. It was a shaky line work with no erase marks, and it was my drawing from a week ago. She had obviously somehow taken it from my backpack and traced it and just sloppily coloured it with a Sharpie or something. "Hey, that's, wait a minute." I said this while checking my backpack. And yes, my drawing was stolen. I obviously immediately got annoyed and said, "You stole that from me." I said it too while crumbling the paper up. I had a quick childish temper back then. She said, "No, I didn't. This is mine," with a blank look on her face. She snatched the crumpled drawing from me and ran back to her desk. She didn't look embarrassed, mind you. She didn't look mad. She just kind of grinned and stared at me for the rest of the class. At first, I thought maybe I just overreacted, that I just made an idiot out of myself since the whole class was watching. But then I realized that Pam was enjoying this drama. And after that, I became her target for the rest of the year. I obviously avoided her like the plague for the next month or so. She wasn't normal, and she creeped me out. But it didn't stop her from approaching me. I noticed every week or so my drawings would go missing too. My friends would call her out for stealing and tracing, and she would somehow cause harm to them. She had actually lured my best friend into being alone with her at one point. She claimed that she was returning the drawings and she didn't want me to see them, and my best friend went to retrieve these drawings and Pam just sucker punched her in the nose. My best friend was in shock, obviously, and she ran to the office to tell an adult what happened, but it wasn't on camera. They also claimed that Pam was a sweet girl that would never hurt anyone. Two things here, though. Pam had obviously put in effort to get on the good side of anyone with authority, and she lured my friend into the girls' locker room knowing that there were no cameras. This freaked out all of my friends, and I was scared too, but that fear eventually turned into rage. I mean, who did she think she was? No one had even thought that she would go that far too, but man, it got so much worse. So one day, I confronted her and I told her that if she ever touched one of my friends again, that I'll follow her home and beat her ass. She seemed to be enjoying these threats too, and she grinned with her nasty teeth showing and her breath smelled like a fucking carcass. And then she said, "Don't threaten me with a good time," forcing out a giggle. Any adult that I told about this would ignore me too. My parents were just too busy fighting each other to listen, and the school staff just didn't care about drama. The only ones that I could trust were the ones directly involved, and my brothers. No one could do anything without proof, and Pam was honestly really sneaky. I was stuck and I was furious, and quite honestly, I wanted revenge. Pam showed up the next day with a picture of me and my two brothers at the Detroit Zoo. She had showed it to the other students, and she claimed that the man in the picture was her boyfriend, my oldest brother. She went into detail about how she had had sex with him 3 times a day, and that me and my brother were just kids that he was babysitting in the picture. And at this point, she had ruined me mentally. How did she even get that picture? It was my locker. She had found out my combo somehow, obviously, and I was feeling pretty exposed and small at this point. Finally, and the most disturbing thing she pulled, sadly not the last thing though, but she had decided that she wanted to get me expelled. She went into the bathroom during lunch one time and hurt herself, and she choked herself in her back straps and hit her head on the hand dryers and slammed herself into the walls, and I only knew this because a girl from my English class witnessed the whole thing. She even asked Pam if she was okay, and Pam answered with, "I'm fine, why do you ask?" As if she hadn't just thrown herself at sharp corners or something. The witness helped, and I was escorted out of my class by 2 school security officers, and they interrogated me for an hour. They asked me where I was at lunch, and if I was sure I wasn't lying, and they asked me if I had a violent family, and all sorts of things. I rolled my eyes after they told me that I was a liar, and I just called my brother. He came in a half an hour later and told them what Pam had been doing, and that they could lose their jobs for interrogating me like this. At this point, they seemed to listen to him because the principal was his old science teacher, and they actually got along really well. Thank God for small towns, right? So, I managed to get 3 witnesses in, and I chose the girl from my English class who saw Pam mutilate herself in the bathroom. I chose my best friend who got punched in the face, and I chose an actual teacher that saw Pam take things out of my backpack. Pam claimed that I borrowed her books and she was taking them back. I was in the bathroom at the time. With all this proof, they had no choice but to search Pam's locker. And what they found, I'll never forget. They found photos of me and my family, and they found my schedule and just an unbelievable amount of drawings that I had done. It was like she had a shrine and she wanted to be me. I was horrified. They asked me if we had been in a relationship or something, and I said no, and that I'm straight. She actually ended up failing her art class too, because she had used all of my art for her grades. She was suspended and seemed to have disappeared after getting caught. Honestly, I don't blame her. The whole school was talking about it. I even got some apologies from Pam's little jerk circle, and they told me that they were too afraid to do anything about it, and that she would show up at their homes randomly after school. She had so many people wrapped around her nasty little fingers, and I had a feeling that Pam had something terrible happen to her as a child or something, and that's why she was the way that she was. But disturbingly enough, the last I heard about her, she had actually pushed her grandmother down the stairs and left her there until the cops showed up. Apparently, a concerned elderly neighbor heard yelling in a usually quiet house and called the cops. I don't know what's wrong with Pam. I don't know why she did the things that she did, but Pam, please stay away from me. This happened a few weeks ago, and I'm still a bit shaken by it. So my husband and I, we like to take long drives in the desert with our dog. We live just outside of Las Vegas and are fortunate to live in a city with abundant and beautiful areas to stargaze or use a telescope. My husband just got one for his birthday in October, so he was excited to try it out and all that. We drove our Kia up to a popular overlook and he took out the telescope. He showed me a bunch of constellations and we even saw a shooting star. The doggo sat in the car too with the two windows rolled down at this time, and my dog is a bitch straight up. They weren't kidding when they named female dogs that too. She's an American cattle dog and she saved my ass before from a home invasion. She's protective of both me and her dad. Anyway, hubby had to pee and he told me to wait in the car for him. So I got in and locked the door, and meanwhile I'm browsing Reddit when I hear gravel moving, and thinking it's my hubby, I remark, that was fast, and suddenly my dog goes berserk. She's snarling, barking, and so I turn around and there's a dude that's not my husband. The idiot made a huge mistake though. He put his hand through an open window with a crazy 63-pound dog. She's got his hand, and so he's just screaming. I'm screaming and my husband is yelling as he runs towards us with his pants half on. The dog lets his arm go and the guy takes off, and I call the cops. My husband tries chasing after the guy, but he's 6'3" and 280 pounds, and this guy was fast. Anyway, the cops do show up eventually and tell us that they'll look out for him, but to maybe stay away from that area that night. The cops in our town are just an absolute joke. Anyway, the doggo got a cup of Dairy Queen that night, and we're very grateful for her. This past weekend, I went out on a date with an old friend from high school and was dropped back off at home at around 11:30 p.m. I live in a 2-story apartment building located near the outer edge of town in a small residential area, and usually by this time the streets are empty and it's pretty quiet. I entered inside through the front door and began up the stairs, and I was 3 or 4 steps from the top of the stairwell when I saw somebody I've never seen before sitting down on the floor with his back leaning against my apartment door, looking down at what I first thought was a phone, but was actually a box cutter, which he was playing around with. I was flabbergasted and quietly asked if he could move so I could get inside, but he didn't even acknowledge my existence. I quietly walked back down the stairs and knocked on a fellow tenant's door, but didn't get an answer. I tried on 3 others when somebody finally came too. I told him about the creepy dude with the box cutter, and he agreed to help me out and have the police on the phone if anything were to escalate, or if the man refused to leave or something. We both went up the stairs, and the guy was still sitting there, messing around with his box cutter, and I stood there observing while the other tenant demanded that he move out of the way or else. Once again, no answer, not even a change in facial expression. I walked back down the stairs and dialed the closest apartment, and they were going to send a trooper over as soon as they could. After sitting outside for a few minutes and still talking to dispatch, the man must have finally realized that he wasn't welcome, and I watched as he walked right past me out of the apartment building and onto the street, before just disappearing into the distance. When the police arrived, they took statements from me and the other tenant too, while another one of their units drove around to try and locate the man, which they did. However, because he wasn't actually breaking any laws, they weren't able to take any action against him, but ensured us that he would be charged with trespassing if he ever comes back. I don't know what the guy was doing, just sitting there in front of my door playing with a box cutter. Man, it was pretty disturbing. This happened many years ago, shortly after moving into a new house with my parents. I was around 10 years old at the time, I'd say. My room had one big sliding glass window that faced the steps leading up to our front door, being up a hilly driveway in a somewhat remote part of the city, we never locked our doors or closed our windows unless we were running the heat. The house needed a bit of work, I must admit, and one of the flaws was that every now and then the wind would cause the screen on my window to fall out. Well, no big problem, I guess. I would wake up and stick it back in and just go back to bed anyway. One night, a couple of weeks after moving in, I had gone to bed after watching a movie with my parents and woke up to my screen falling out again. No big deal, but I was really tired and half asleep, so decided to just go back to bed and deal with it later. I doze off, just to be woke up again by a man's voice. Hey, wake up, you little shit. Still half asleep, I opened my eyes to see a dark figure leaning into my bedroom window, trying to get my attention. Being young and barely awake, I immediately assumed it was my dad playing some weird prank on me, and I told him, "Go away, I'm trying to sleep," and didn't think anything of it. I heard something along the lines of "all right," and then the figure walked down the steps and away from the window. After a few minutes of trying to get back to sleep, my mind starts ticking a bit, and I get up and go down the hall and ask my dad why he did that, to find that he was fast asleep, and that was definitely not him. The cops were obviously called, and they searched the surrounding area, but never found anyone out there. A month or so passed before the second incident happened, and this time I had fallen asleep with my lights on and windows closed, only to wake up to knocking on my window. After what happened the first time, I woke up immediately to find a bald man that I didn't recognize knocking on my window and beckoning me to come open it for him. This time, I started yelling for my dad, and once the man at the window figured out what I was doing, he bolted down the steps and away from my house. Again, the cops were called, but the guy was never found. I slept with my windows and blinds closed for a long time after that. My girlfriend and I took some time out to do some backpacking and travel the world. We went to some incredible places and met really interesting people, but our most interesting story is probably this one. As I said, we traveled all over: Myanmar, Bolivia, Mexico, and many places that have some unsafe reputations. However, we're both pretty good at reading people and staying out of trouble, so we never had any major incidences. We were on a fairly tight budget too at this point in our journey, as we had recently been to Japan and wanted to chill for a bit before finding some work in Vietnam. We decided to volunteer on a Cambodian island. It's a bit of a luxury island, full of resorts that we could normally afford to stay at, so it seemed like a pretty good gig. I worked behind the bar at this resort, and my girlfriend worked in the restaurant. In return, we got to sleep in the dorm and our own meals for free and all that. The manager told me that since I was working behind the bar and Scottish, that an English guy who lived on the island would likely come and see me, and that his name was Dog. It didn't take long for this to take place too. A fairly old guy in his late 50s, early 60s, came into the bar, and he was quite tall and still powerfully built, and was accompanied by a massive Rottweiler, which he quickly told me was also called Dog. We had a bit of a laugh taking the piss out of each other, and he was making fun of me of being Scottish, and I was making fun of him going by the name Dog and being English standard British bullshit. I noticed too that he was always wearing wife beaters which said Dogs Offshore Bar and had a picture of his dog, the Rottweiler, on it. I got to know more about Dog the man. He used to work in construction and offshore, as did I, so we had quite a bit to talk about. And heaps of opportunity to talk too, as he usually arrived for his first beer at 7 a.m. He was clearly an alcoholic. But he never struck me as a bad person early on, just a sadly complicated one, like when you talk to someone who's homeless or something. Anyone who's ever been to Vietnam or Thailand or Cambodia or any Southeast Asian country will understand how rare it is to see a dog that's not some kind of street mutt or tiny pet. But his huge dog would stand out even in Europe, however. Even for a Rottweiler, it was massive. It was really muscular with a metal chin to give some semblance of control if it was to kick off. I really liked dogs too, so I was quite interested in what this huge dog was doing on the island, and I always made sure to have some water out for it. It was friendly enough, but never left his owner's side, and seemed to be a working dog in terms of its intensity. It was clearly a guard dog. It turned out that the dog was actually a Finnish drug dealer's dog, and that dog, the person, had bought him. He told me the dog had an attack command, and he kept him primed by using it often on other island dogs. He told me that it killed multiple dogs this way, and I didn't believe this at first, but there was an island dog the manager would often leave food out for, and this dog would come near the bar usually when Dog's monster dog wasn't about. But that night he must have been hungry enough to brave it, and Dog hissed the command, and the Rottweiler bounded for the island dog, knocking over chairs and all sorts until he was called off. It was actually pretty scary. One night I was sat at the bar just talking with Dog about this job that I'd be taking on soon at a digital marketing company. I was in talks with the CEO at this company at the time. It was a digital marketing job in which I would work from home or coffee shops updating and improving websites. He said that it sounded made up and that the company was likely some kind of con to get my bank details. I told him that it was a real company and that I'd Googled it. He was really drunk at this point, and the restaurant was now closed, so my girlfriend joined us and we were all having a beer at the bar. He told my girlfriend how I believed everything I read online and how I shouldn't do that. He said people publish all kinds of made-up shit on there, and I asked what he was referring to, and he said never Google me. So I was like, how could I Google you? I mean, your name is Dog. If I Googled you, I would just see a picture of an Alsatian or something. But then I remembered those tops that he wore. Dog's Offshore Bar. So I told him, I'm going to Google you, laughing. But he was quite annoyed by that. And at this point, other than owning a weaponized canine, I thought that he was pretty harmless. But boy, was I wrong. I began reading out loud the interesting things that I found out about his bar and related stories. One of particular interest was about a conviction. The joking and laughing stopped, and I quickly stopped reading out loud. I looked quickly to my girlfriend, and I could see the smile leave her face too as she realized we were drinking with a killer. It turned out that this guy had murdered his Thai wife and then been briefly imprisoned before bailing out. You can post bail for murder in Thailand, and then fleeing the country before trial. He had stabbed her, and his alibi to the police was that he couldn't have killed her because he was fucking a ladyboy on the beach at the time. He told us that he had been framed and that his wife's ex was in the police and he had killed her for moving on and all sorts of stuff. I was nodding along to everything he said and trying my best to show that I agreed with him, whilst making sure the machete I used to open up coconuts for cocktails was in easy reach should his beast be given any command words. He told us about how hard it was being one of the few white guys in a Thai prison, how he had to attack guards to get into solitary confinement, and they then beat him mercilessly. He told us that they used to leave shanks in his room and put him in the yard with pedophiles for him to kill. He told us, too, that he had killed before he went to prison and that he killed while he was inside too, but that he didn't kill his wife. His wife was apparently a Thai prostitute that he met while trafficking women from Thailand to Singapore on his boat. The same one that he used to flee Thailand after his arrest and set up his bar, Dog's Offshore Bar, with the tagline, Dogs Welcome, wives must be kept on leashes or under control. Well, we both acted like we believed him, and eventually he left. The whole night, however, I was waiting next to the door for him and his dog to just come for us. I even propped up a bin against the door so that anyone coming in would knock it over so that we would maybe have a chance to react. In fact, I nearly attacked my friend when he came in. It was pretty fucked up. After this, we quickly decided to leave and only saw Dog again once more. My girlfriend was opening a can of coconut milk for a curry, and he came by and jokingly asked if she needed a knife, and he patted his back pocket. The guy is known as Mick the Pom, or Mick the Dog if you want to Google this. If you Google Dogs Offshore Bar, you'll see what I did too. He was living in a tent on the island with his dog keeping watch while he slept, and I'm not sure if he's still there now, but man, talking to a killer, it was creepy. When I was 13, I started modelling. I did fairly well, but honestly, I hated the business. They were just really strict about my weight. I mean, I couldn't get over 100 pounds or I'd lose my contracts. I couldn't dye my hair or have any piercings without permission, and they would often check on me to make sure that I haven't gone against their wishes. But fast forward 2 years, though, to me being 15. One day I got an email from a fitness photographer. This wasn't uncommon for me to get random emails because my agency would give my email out once they booked me something. This is also about 12 years ago, and back then I naively didn't worry too much about anything really. You know, the common teenage mentality of nothing's ever going to get me. In the email, the photographer told me that he'd like to do a shoot, and the compensation that he promised me, I would have made more money than I have of any other shoots. So, obviously, being money-driven, I emailed him back and told him yes, I'd be interested, and he sent me one back after that saying that he needed some sample photos of my calves and my feet and my backside and my breasts to make sure that I had the physique he wanted. I was a little cautious, I must admit, but I thought, you know, he's offering me a lot of money and I should probably do what he's asking or he's going to find somebody else. And that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted me to feel pressured to send in the pictures, and I did feel the pressure. Of course, I had it in the back of my mind that I shouldn't do it, but the money was real good. So I sent the pictures clothed, and he said that he couldn't tell my proper sizing and I need to send him nude photos. Obviously, I declined this and told him that I'd be willing to set up a meeting and his assistant can take measurements, but I would not send nude photos over the internet. He set up a meeting but cancelled last minute, and a few weeks later he was on the news. He apparently got busted for child pornography, and shocker, he was not a fitness photographer. Who knows what could have happened to me had I actually gone to meet him, though. I never found out how he even got my email, in fact, because my agency said that they never spoke with the guy. So my parents divorced when I was really young. I do remember after the divorce that they both lived in apartments in the middle of Tennessee. Well, not long before I was to start kindergarten, my mum remarried to my stepdad and we moved to a small house in the middle of nowhere, Alabama, about 30 miles outside of Birmingham. It was in a good school district and near my stepdad's family, who would be helping with my brand new little sister. This was actually a really exciting time for my other little sister and me, and we finally had cousins, aunts and uncles and grandparents that we would get to see all the time instead of travelling for the holidays to New England or Florida only once or twice a year. We didn't even care that they were all step-family, we were just happy to be around other people. The cousins that we saw most were Brady and Micah. Their mum and our mum worked odd jobs to make ends meet and helped each other out with childcare while my stepdad worked as a truck driver and Uncle Randy worked as an EMT ambulance driver. So our house was an odd setup. We lived in a little two-room house that actually sat almost right behind a large old farmhouse that no one lived in. Whenever Brady and Micah would come and visit, we would always end up going through the house and always wondered why it was still set up like a house since no one lived there. The beds in the bedrooms were made, there were a couple of plates in the sink in the kitchen for the last few years. It was like someone just left for work one day and never came home. So after a day of playing in the house, I found a plate in the kitchen that I thought was very pretty. I knew that we were about to go visit my grandparents in Florida for the summer and thought that it would be a perfect gift for my Southern Belle plate collecting grandmother. I took it back home and my mum helped me clean it and get it ready that evening before sending me off to bed. After my mum sent me to bed, she followed her nightly routine of smoking a cigarette, dumping the ashtray, sweeping off the porch before locking it, and then watching the nightly news before going to bed herself. While she was in bed, she kept smelling a burning cigarette, though. She couldn't figure out why, though, and even got up to check the garbage to make sure that her last one was not still lit. And it wasn't. So she went back to bed. She's almost asleep, convinced that the smell is just stuck in her nose, when all the lights in her room turn on. She turns to get out of bed and comes face to face with me, standing next to her bed, clutching my blanket and crying. She asks me why I turned on all the lights, and I just break down crying and barely get the words out. I say that I didn't turn on any lights, not even the ones in our room or in the living room. Carolyn did it. I told her to stop and turn the lights back off, but she just laughed at me. My mum was really confused and asked who Carolyn was. I explained that Carolyn is my friend that I made. Normally she just turns on some lights at night, and she didn't have lights in her house next door until she was 6 like me and likes to play with them. But when I tell her to stop and go home to sleep, she turns off the lights and walks away. But tonight, she turned on all the lights, and when I told her to stop, she laughed at me and walked into our closet instead of going home. And now, she doesn't want to leave, even though I want her to, and she made fun of me. My mum got out of bed and picked me up, and as she was carrying me back to my room, she quickly discovered that every light, every lamp, every ceiling light, even the pull chain lamp under the kitchen counter, they were all on. She took me to my room and laid me in bed and checked the closet just to make sure that Carolyn wasn't in there, and turned off the bedroom light so that my sisters wouldn't wake up. She went out into the hall and reached for the light switch, but before she could even touch it, every light in the house just went off. Mum was convinced that we had lost power, so she hit the light switch to check, and the whole light came back on like normal. As odd as it was, she just put it down to faulty electrics and went back to bed. As she laid in bed, the cigarette smell came back though, and she sat up trying to remember if she smelled it while dealing with me, or if she was just too preoccupied and freaked out to notice. While she was trying to remember, she heard the screen door to the back porch open and slam shut again. Of course, she knew that she had locked it before going to bed, so she wasted no more time and picked up the phone and called Uncle Randy, since this was before the prevalence of cell phones, and it wasn't like my stepdad would be able to make it from Arkansas back to Alabama in any time quick enough for the circumstances anyway. So, for 12 minutes, my mum just sat frozen in her bed, scared to move, listening for any other sign of an intruder or that of any of the three of us had woken up. Then she heard a car pull up into the driveway, followed by Randy banging on the screen door and yelling her name. She ran to the kitchen and threw open the back door, turned on the back porch light, and immediately saw it. Between her and Randy were about 20 burnt cigarette butts and cigarette ashes just strewn across the floor that she had just cleaned an hour before, and a locked screen door. Last year, I went out of state for my first year of college to a school in Indiana. In the first week, I formed many friendships, and one of those was with a boy who would end up becoming my stalker. He was fairly normal at the start, and I genuinely enjoyed his company, as well as his roommates, and we became quite close, spending a lot of time together. Soon, I had developed friendships with other people, and he became a part of my friend group. About a month into knowing him, I started to get a feeling that he liked me more than a friend. I still acted normal around him because I didn't want to draw attention to it, because the feeling wasn't mutual, and I just didn't want to ruin our friendship. One night about 3 months into school, though, everything changed. This night, all of my friends came to my dorm room. At the time, it was a double that I was occupying by myself. to drink before they went to a party. I had told my friends that they could drink in my room, but I didn't want to go out because I was very upset by a hurricane that was hitting my hometown in Florida. All of my friends were supportive of this, except my soon-to-be stalker, that is. But throughout the time that he was in my room, he was making jokes about how dramatic I was being, and even when everyone else told him to stop, he just wouldn't let up. Finally, everyone was ready to leave to go to the party, and my stalker is the last to exit my room. Before going, he tells me that he cares about me and that if I change my mind and decide to go out, or if I need anything, that I should text him. Which I found strange given his previous behaviour, but I figured that he had come to his senses and was attempting to be a good friend. A couple of hours after my friends leave, I get a text from another friend telling me to come help out one friend who is too drunk and is vomiting, so I change and I walk to a building. Upon arriving, I find out that she's fine now and they put her into bed. I go outside of their building and cry about what's happening at home on the steps by myself. I get a text from my stalker asking if I had changed my mind, and in that moment I was sad and figured that if I went out with them and maybe had a few drinks that I would feel better. I tell him where I am and ask if the group wants to meet up, and he says that they'll come but arrives alone. He suggested that we hanged out in my room, but I told him that I wanted to go and see the group. He didn't seem to be too happy with this too, but I call one of my other friends to see where they are, and we go to another dorm building where they were drinking. But the party was apparently busted, so they just left. When we get inside, we have a hard time figuring out which floor they're on and what room they're in. My stalker is visibly drunk at this point and pushes me into one of the connecting suites that's vacant. He begins to make fun of me again for being upset and is becoming very touchy. I push him off of me and tell him to stop. We finally find one of our friends, and that friend tells us that we can meet him in his room and he has alcohol there. My stalker suggests that we just go to his room instead because he's in a fight with one of the other guys and doesn't want to see him, and I believe this and agree. When we get to his room, we are greeted by his roommate and a bunch of his roommate's friends. My stalker grabs a backpack with his alcohol and says that we should just go to my room and our friend group can meet up with us, so we do this too. My dorm had 2 beds in it, and my stalker sits down on the one that I sleep on, so I decided to sit on the other one. He puts on a movie and everything is normal at first. I immediately begin texting my one friend whose room everyone was in and tell him to bring our friends over to my room. But my friends are all drunk at this point, and everyone I texted just wasn't making any sense. My stalker then gets into the same bed as me and lays beside me, and I immediately feel uncomfortable and start rapidly texting my friends and tell them that so-and-so is acting strange, and that they need to come now. He sees I'm on my phone a lot, and so my stalker grabs my phone from me and tells me I need to take a 10-minute break from it. During this time, he becomes really touchy too and suggests we try this trick with my jewel where he exhales it into my mouth, to which I reject. I tell him that it's been 10 minutes and that he needs to give me my phone back, but he denies knowing what I'm talking about. I stand up and move to the other bed because I feel uncomfortable, and he gets up and moves as well. I sit at the very end of the bed, opposite him, and demand my phone this time. He continues to play dumb, and instead he moves closer to me and tries to playfully touch me. Well, I've had enough at this point, and I tell him that he needs to give me my phone right now and that it isn't funny anymore. He tells me that he needs to go to the bathroom at this point. While he's in the bathroom, I grab my laptop and I message all of my friends to come to my room ASAP and tell them that he's being really creepy and I need their help. Once he returns, he tells me right away that he wants to level with me and that he thinks we should hook up. I'd been making it very clear the entire time that I did not want that, and thought that he would be able to read my body language and the situation and realize that I was clearly uncomfortable. I tell him no and that I just want to be his friend and not ruin the friendship. But he doesn't listen. He comes over to me and starts playfully grabbing me, and when I push him off and tell him to stop, he pushes me down onto the bed and tries to come over me. He grabs my legs and pulls me into him, and I was thankfully sober and was able to kick him away from me and get up and just run into the hallway. He doesn't leave my room and begins to insult me and tell me that he never wanted to be my friend and only wanted to sleep with me, and that guys and girls can never be friends. It always has to lead to something more. He then says that he would never date me and that I'm too emotionally unstable for him, and a slew of other insults. One thing that he said that especially scares me is that he was raised to take what he wants no matter what when defending his actions. I don't know what to do and just start crying and yelling at him to leave my room. He refuses and then makes fun of me for crying. At this point, he still has my phone and won't give it back or leave too. I threaten to call the campus police on him if he doesn't leave, and finally, he agrees. After that night, he texted me every day for a week, trying to talk to me, and one of my friends told me to listen to what he had to say, so I do. He ended up confessing his love for me and told me that he still thinks that we cannot just be friends, even after I said multiple times that that is all we ever could be, and ultimately I told him that I think we need to just stop talking. All of my other friends knew what happened and dropped him as well at this point, and he spent months trying to talk to me, and honestly became just completely obsessed. I would still hang out with his roommates, but I would only go to their room when he wasn't there. On the few occasions where he would come in, he would later text me paragraphs of how immature I was being for ignoring him. Finally, I said that we could be civil and just be acquaintances to be nice. But that led to him getting really mad at me for still acting uncomfortable around him and just never wanting to hang out with him. At this point, every time I would see him, he would just blow up my phone and text me non-stop about me being fake towards him and that I needed to get over myself, and I eventually just blocked him. After doing this, he got really angry, and he would show up where I was all the time and just stare at me. His roommates would tell me that he talked about me every night, basically for the rest of the school year too. He would try to ask some things about what I was doing and who I was hooking up with and all sorts of things. He would go up to my close girlfriends all of the time too and ask what he could do to fix things with me. He tried to fight a guy who expressed that he was interested in taking me out on a date once too. A few months after the incident too, he made up an excuse to come to my door. He lived in the same floor as me, almost every other day. He started trying to talk with me in the hallways, and he would offer me these things and even bought me a Christmas present once. The last few months of school, he told his roommate that his goal was to sleep with me before graduation and that he thinks that I want him and I'm just playing games with him. Trust me, I in no way want or make it seem that way. The only way I act towards him is just completely disgusted. Even over the summer, he's been texting his roommate about me too. All of my friends tell me that he's stalking me and recognize that the way that I'm acting is in no way asking for his attention. I go back to school in the middle of August and he'll be there, and he'll be living in a frat next year, so I don't have to worry about him being on my floor, but this whole situation still worries me. I think something is really wrong with him emotionally or mentally, and not just because of the way that he's acted towards me, but just in general. I don't want anything to happen to myself or anyone else, and I think that I should do something about it. But looking back on that night, I would say that his behavior and the things that he said were very rapey, and that the people who think if I want something I should take it no matter what at a higher risk to sexually assault someone for sure. What do you guys think I should do? Do you think I should be worried, or do you think I should just let it go? Let me know in the comments below. My boyfriend and I went on vacation in Sedona, Arizona. There isn't much to do at night, so We bought some movie tickets and went to get gas before the movie. I was in the middle of smoking a cigarette as we pulled into the station, so I got out and sat far away from the pump so I could finish it. A homeless-looking man slowly started walking towards me as soon as I sat down, and something about him just seemed off. When he got close enough to me where I knew he was definitely about to say something, I threw my cigarette down and started walking towards my boyfriend's car. The man put his hands up in a prayer motion, and I told him, I have no money, I have nothing on me, sorry, and tried walking off again. But he stopped me and said, wait, no, I don't want money, please just listen to me. You need to go to the bathroom, I'm saving a wife. Well, I ignored him and continued walking very quickly to where my boyfriend was filling up his gas, and the man was still following me. I kept saying, please just leave me alone, and finally, my boyfriend heard me and saw the guy. But when the guy got to my boyfriend filling his tank, he started yelling at me too. He was saying, why the hell would you drop this girl off? What ethnicity are you? I'm trying to save her life. My boyfriend is short-tempered, so he got in the man's face and was telling him to just go away and that he was going to call the cops. Then, the man balled up his fists, pumped his chest out, and got in my boyfriend's face like he was about to fight him. I put my hand out and begged him to just leave us alone because it wouldn't be worth it if we fought him. Luckily, the man walked away, but my boyfriend was super pissed and was yelling at him. He stopped pumping his gas and drove to the park in front of the station so that he could report the situation. The man had his stuff out on the side of the gas station, and when he saw us park, he started screaming at us again and looking at me while he rubbed himself and told me that what I should do to him. This was obviously very, very uncomfortable for me, and my boyfriend tried getting out of the car, but then he whipped out a pocket knife. He wasn't walking towards us with it, but he was playing with it in a taunting kind of way. I told my boyfriend to just get in and to drive off because I didn't want him to slash our tyres and us be stuck because no tyre place is open late in small Sedona. He listened to me and we drove back to the theatre, and we ended up returning our tickets and drove back to the gas station to make a report a couple of minutes later. We found out that the cops conveniently drove in right after we left, and the man just tried fighting them, so he was arrested and taken. Thank you, Karma, but to be quite honest, I often think what would have happened to me if I'd gone in that bathroom with this guy. So, I don't live in the greatest area, nor in the nicest apartment, so I'm always kind of checking my surroundings when I'm out and about. Nothing crazy, but just being aware of what's going on around me. This being said, the other night I decided that the mountain of dirty clothes inhabiting my closet was bordering on disgusting, and it was time to do one of my best favorite chores, laundry. I don't mind doing laundry itself, but the laundry room in this building always gives me the creeps. It's in the dank and dark basement of the building, and you always have to grope the wall for the light switch. It really would make an excellent location for a horror film, to be honest. So, I go down and throw my laundry in the machine, and everything's going fine and dandy. Come back 40 minutes later, throw it in the dryer, and nothing out of the usual. Yet. An hour later, I go back down in the basement to collect my stuff out of the dryer. Well, when I turn on the light, the dryer door is open and my shit is just strewn about on the ground, hanging out of the dryer and everything. And to top it all off, they were all still wet, which was the worst part because I didn't want to have to keep coming down to the laundry room because I'm a lazy shit. Anyway, normally I'd be like, whatever, because sometimes people open dryers and just don't close them, but this really looked like someone rummaged through my stuff. Shrugging this off, I put my stuff back in, and that's when I get like a sharp chill running down my back. Like, it was so random, but I genuinely felt like I wasn't alone. So I turn around back to the elevator because, like I previously stated, lazy shit, and all of a sudden I I hear the sound of someone like frantically running up the stairs and on the other side of the room, almost as if they'd been spotted or something. I get all my laundry back to my apartment and notice that I'm missing some stuff, but at this point I'm kind of creeped out, so I'm not in the mood to go snooping around looking for some t-shirts. So I kind of just forget about it until a couple of days later I received an email from our landlord telling all the residents that a homeless guy had not only broke into the building, but he performed sexual acts upon himself in the laundry room, then started a fire and went around the building trying to break into people's unlocked apartments. So, I'm guessing this guy went through my stuff, probably took something, did God knows what with it, and then started an actual fucking fire for some reason. I don't know exactly what he was doing down there when I was down there, but it's creepy to think that this guy was probably just feet away from me. I'm what I would most certainly call a creep magnet. I get weirdos all the time, and it's actually become a bit of a joke that I share with my friends and co-workers, telling them of the many, many creepers that I've encountered in my time as a retail employee. I get all kinds of people in my store, and I'm known very well for my bright attitude and overly chipper way of being, which has come to be loved by my regulars and newcomers alike. It's more than likely a contributing factor in why I get so many weirdos too. And probably my height. I'm actually a really short girl, standing at 4'8", and looking about 5 years younger than my age of 21. I'm rather filled out for how young I look too, so that's probably another reason as well. But on to the story. So, today was like just any other day. Just another ordinary day, working by myself in the store and checking out customers, stocking shelves in my moments away from the register, and a normal day. At some point while on the register, though, I greeted a man with a large dark beard, bald, and wearing glasses as he came through the door. He immediately smiled and got that surprised look on his face that I've come to know as the, oh shoot, I'm totally going to creep on this girl today, look. No biggie though, I'm used to it and I know how to handle myself. Eventually, after about an hour or two of being on register, I'd pretty much cleaned up the store of my customers and moved on to stocking candy. The man before the beard approaches me with a smile and holds out a large white trash can. Excuse me? Yes? I reply, glancing up from the box that I'm stocking. Are there any more of these in the back? This one doesn't seem to have a lid, he says, gesturing to the large trash can in hand. Yeah, I think so. I can check for you. I smile and am polite, like I always am before turning away and heading towards the stockroom. I notice that he's following me and think nothing of it, but glance back down the aisles for any customers as I walk. Immediately, I take note of the store's emptiness. And, well, shit. I guess it's just us in the store at this point, I think to myself. Moving through the stockroom door, I'm quickly relieved that this guy stops at the entrance. I'll be right back, okay? I say as I make my turn around some full rolltainers, which, due to just receiving a truck, our stockroom is full of them. They stand really tall and are like giant movable walls almost, but very heavy, mind you. But being so small, though, I don't have to move them much to make a path through and see what's on them. So, after only a minute, I've made myself a little path, having 3 ones on my right and left and in front of me, and I decide to give up my search for trash cans. Sighing, I go to turn around and inform him of my defeat, only to find that he's in my tiny path of walls, a very tight squeeze for a man of his stature, standing directly behind me. Hey, did you find him? No, I don't think we have any. I try to laugh and avoid acknowledging the creepy situation, but I'm very aware of my surroundings. I'm in a very small area with walls at my back and sides towering over myself, and this very robust man is standing in the way of my only exit, in a room very far from any customers with no cameras and no other employees in the store. Pretty much, I'm helpless and increasingly growing scared at how this man isn't moving to let me out. I go to voice that I need to return to work after a solid minute goes by, but am not able to get out a single word before he says in this creepy, almost shy voice, "You're just the cutest little thing. Did you know that?" Within an instant, I'm scared and feel ill-intention from this guy. I began thinking to myself that this is how I was about to die. Surprising myself, though, I choke out without thinking. I just heard my bell. He looks confused, but doesn't budge, and then says, "What?" And I say, "I just heard my bell. There are people up front who need to be checked out, and they're looking for me." I stand nervously, knowing full well that neither of us heard the familiar ching from the service bell that I keep on the register. Okay, but what about my trash can?" he asks, stepping forward, but taking a glance back toward the trash can. Then again, with lightning thinking, I blurt out, "I'll mark it down half price, okay? No big deal," laughing and trying to act like nothing is out of the ordinary. I slip by him, seeing my opening and his turning around, and I try my hardest to walk away, pretending to be calm as I exit the stockroom and then sprint to the front of the store the moment I was out of sight. He wound up leaving without purchasing the trash can, and after that day, I've never seen him since. I don't know why he felt so brazen that he could just come out the back like that with me, and the fact that he kind of cut me off from getting out for well over a minute or two is really weird. Quite honestly, I think the guy was up to no good. So let me begin this story by telling you of how much of an idiot I was. I was drug addicted, alcoholic, riddled with anxiety, and most definitely at my rock bottom. But due to this, I didn't have the best judgment, nor a good judge of character. I started hanging out with a very nasty crowd. Grunge, punk rock, loved to party, never had their own cash, destructive, impulsive. You get the drill. An ex-friend of mine, Bob, started hanging out with me quite a bit more and more as the weeks passed by. Bob worked as a pizza delivery driver, and he never I'm a local rookie cop in a small town in Pennsylvania, currently stuck working night shift. I work the normal patrol shift, driving around, pulling traffic, responding to your normal domestic disputes, and whatever other wonderful calls dispatch sends my way. But ever since this past weekend, every single night, I kept getting called to this same house. At first, I thought it was my co-workers just playing pranks on the rookie. I mean, I have 2 years on the job, but in such a small town, I worked with most guys my dad's age. I've omitted certain names and addresses for obvious reasons, but here's what happened. So Friday night, around 0200 hours, actually Saturday morning really, a dispatch gets over the radio. "Dispatch to 1034? 1034, go ahead. Hey, we just got a 911 hang-up from a landline that's coming back to Patch Lane, I think. Can you go and check it out?" 10-4 en route. So I immediately start driving to the address, which was about 6 miles away, I think, but it's a pretty rural area, so I get there in less than 10 minutes. I turn right onto the gravel lane, and after about 7 seconds, I see the house up ahead on the right. No lights on inside. I park my cruiser on the gravel lane, lights off, so as not to announce myself in case there is an actual emergency going on inside. We're trained not to just roll up to a house, lights on in case the subject decides to ambush the officers arriving with gunfire or something. Anyway, I quietly approach the old farmhouse and check the perimeter. There's no signs of anything. No lights, no sound, not even a park arced anywhere. I begin to think that maybe dispatch got the address wrong. 1034 to dispatch. Dispatch, go ahead. Hey, I'm at Patch Lane, and can you confirm that this is the actual address? Yeah, stand by. 1034, yeah, that's the correct address. Do you need backup? Negative. It appears nobody's home, but I'll update, okay? At this point, I knock on the front door and announce myself. Hello? My name's Officer Barkley. I'm from the police department. There's no answer, and all the windows were closed, so I gently try the front door, and it's locked. 10:30 to dispatch. Dispatch, go ahead. It looks like the house is abandoned. I think the 911 hang-up might have just been some cross wires or something. Clear me no report. 10-4. At this point, it's about 0230 hours, and man, do I need a cup of coffee since I have another 3.5 hours left on my shift. I head over to the local 24-hour gas station and find two of my ever-so-busy co-workers standing there fueling up on caffeine as well. They grin and ask if I had fun responding to the old doc's house. Clearly. I must have had a dumb look on my face showing the confusion I was feeling, because then he goes, "You don't know, do ya?" He continues. "That old farmhouse over there, it belonged to Dr. Wentz. He was the guy that I'm sure you've heard about, who used to do the botched abortions and all sorts of inhumane procedures back in the 1800s. He's the guy all the rich went to when they had young daughters getting knocked up, or when they had a special needs child that they didn't want to keep. He actually built that house himself, and even named the road Patch Lane as a joke to all of the patching that he did for people." I finished my coffee, laughing about the old tale the guys were trying to pull on me. I wasn't going to let these guys spook me, especially being that I was one of the only females on the department, and I have to have skin twice as thick. So I finish up my shift, get some Z's, and back in I go on Saturday morning. Around the same time, maybe a little later, around 0230 hours.
Today's video contains strong language. Viewer discretion is advised. I see a lot of people interested in deep web these days. People talking about red doors and many other alternative names to things they think are real, but haven't seen for themselves. People question every day, are these red door events real? Do they really happen? They are very real indeed. Unfortunately, people with sick minds who get off on torture and other abnormal things go searching for these red doors, and when they find them, they dish out great amounts of money just to control the show. The shows are usually hosted by someone who covers their face by a mask or a cloth. The hosts always seem to be in a pissed off and demanding mood, and always seem to be under the influence of some type of drug or booze. I'm going to tell you the experience I had once when going deep into the deep end of the web. Some of you may have heard of it, but can't get there. You can't get there with Tor. Tor is infested with law enforcement. Red doors won't even show up on the Onion anymore, like they used to. The only way you can get to a red door show is through Shadow Web. And to get to the Shadow Web, you need an anonymous server, which is called Skix. It's like the new Tor, but without the law enforcement. The world is a much more cruel place nowadays in the cyber world. As a recently retired FBI agent who specialized in cyber crimes all around the world, I am here to share a story of what I saw in one of my last cases before I retired. The case was never closed and got passed to the agent who replaced me. This was 4 months ago. I was working on a case that had been opened up through an anonymous complaint we had received online. The complaint was lengthy and in detail described and mentioned many acts of torture beyond what I had seen in my time with the agency. The tipster had sent screenshots of what he or she had seen one night while digging deep into the deep web. They explained how they had been a regular on the deep web, but how everything was dying out due to law enforcement, and that they wanted to dig deeper, so they found the shadow web. The process of becoming a member of the shadow web was lengthy. The person claimed it took them up to 2 weeks before they were granted access, after paying. Finally, the email they were expecting came in, and they were granted access after installing Skix. As stated before, that was the new software/program that would allow them access to the shadow web servers. Little did they know what they were getting themselves into. I won't go into detail as to what they mentioned in their report, because it is still under investigation, due to the person being murdered in their own home by an unknown person. This is where I will mention my experience as part of my personal investigation. I was given a link to the shadow web by the recently deceased. With permission from the big head, I was able to sit down and proceed. I took the security precautions and paid the fee. It took the shadow web admin 2 days to send the email allowing me access. In the email, they prompted me to join as many as 4 live sessions that were going on throughout the week. One of them was called Shark Bait, another was called Shit Cereal, and the other 2 are too gross to mention. The shadow web entrance that I was given was a portal to about 10 other websites through the shadow web. The websites didn't have names. They were named by numbers in a 1 through 10 list. There were about 100 other websites on the bottom, but mainly were all under construction. On the main page, it showed the times and dates of the 4 shows that they would be broadcasting live on the shadow web through a stream. There were archives that began in March of 2015 and ended in August. These archives were of previous live streams that had already happened. I decided to take a look. The one that I chose was called Salted Snail. I did not really know what to expect before clicking it. Judging by the name, I thought there had to be a snail involved. There wasn't. I clicked the link, and it took me to a brown page with an ad, and the video behind the ad. The ad started with a clown laughing. He then says,